You are listening to the Chain Reaction Podcast. I'm Jeremiah, and I'm here today with Andre. Andre, how's it going, man?
I am not bad. How about yourself, sir?
Not bad is good. You know, it's been a frustrating day today, a little bit.
Oh, yeah.
Personal stuff that I can't talk about because it's wife-related. We'll just say in-law stuff gets to be a little frustrating, especially depending upon who your in-laws are and what their history of relating to your spouse is. And when you throw a new baby into the mix, that changes things a little bit because I try to be very careful who I expose my child to. And I want them to be safe people that are respectful of him and of others. So I'm a little bit emotionally high-strung. That means that my voice will not change at all, and no one will be able to tell that's the case.
So you kind of got like a Botox effect on your voice, right?
Yeah, I don't know. I would say I'm generally not that expressive with my voice, especially with negative emotions, probably more so than
Which
positive.
is probably a good thing.
I don't know. I think it started as a protection mechanism as a kid, or even young adult. It just feels safer to have people not know what I'm thinking and feeling. And it gives me the upper hand in a way, which is not necessarily a great way to live, but I'm learning to be more emotionally authentic as a human being in general. So the direction that you move in is almost more important than where you're at. Making progress.
Right.
So, Andre, I saw you posted a video this week, and I watched a few minutes of it, but I just didn't get a chance to watch the whole thing about how you lost your job. Would you care to talk about that?
I got fired. Well, I got let go. It wasn't like a performance thing. It was just, I was working for a company that was kind of a mess, and I got brought on as they were in the midst of a big transition. They're being taken over by a larger corporation and moving to another building. And, it was their first time dealing with either of those things, and the management was all over the place. And, by the time they finally started to get settled in, they realized, like, hey, we probably have too many employees. We didn't, we're not hitting the goals that we expected to because it took a lot longer to get set up in a new building. And, so they decided that some people had to go. And I survived the first round, which was about 20 to 30 people.
Okay.
And when the second round came around, I didn't survive that. And I was another 20 to 30 people. And I wasn't bitter about it because I understand that, I out of the people in my department, I was the least experienced. So, they, in that type of industry, in the print industry, you tend to run across people that have, been in whatever position they're in for, 10, 20, 30 years. And then, I'm a newcomer. I'm experienced in the industry, but just not with the particular machine. Yeah. So if they had to make cuts in the department I was in, obviously they're looking at, well, we can let this guy go because he's not really as experienced as the rest. But, we kind of have to keep the veterans on, to make sure that we keep everything running. So, that was just one of those things. And I was getting support from, some of my loved ones, and they were all like cursing the company. And they're like, that's fucked up. That's right before Christmas. This and this and this. And, maybe my 20-year-old self, I might have agreed with all of that and been mad, just had just the basic emotional response to it, which I completely understand. But nowadays, I don't really agree that much. Like I understand it's, business is about making money. And if they're losing money on something, or if they can save money in some way, if they're spending money unnecessarily on something, and, in this case, it was me and about 30 other people. um, then I fully expect, I understand their decision to let me go. Um, Back in the day, I probably would have been more upset thinking like a lot of people these days that a job is it's a right. You have a right to, all of that shit, but you really don't. You know what I mean? Like I
Right.
tell everybody, a job really is nothing more than a symptom of someone else's success. The only reason that I had that job to begin with is because those people had a demand. There was a demand for those people's product that they
Yep.
needed help to meet. And, at some point they didn't need my help. So, hey, that's fine. But then it turns out that, I got laid off on Friday and what is it, Thursday? I think yesterday I just interviewed for a better position and a guy absolutely wants to bring me on. So I'm good already, which is
Nice.
nuts. Which is
Yeah.
nuts because when I first moved down to PA from Virginia, like it took me like 6 months to find a
Hmm.
job, and then here getting laid off, find a job and a better job in a matter of days. So I'm good.
Yeah.
No hard feelings at
Man,
all.
you really got after that, finding a
Yeah,
new job stuff. I mean, didn't you have
had
any
to.
unemployment you could milk for a bit?
Kids gotta eat. Oh, I absolutely did, but why? Like, I hate to have too much time on my hands, and if I can work, I'm going to work.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's I don't have an excuse for it. I don't even feel like I don't even feel like a man if I'm able to work and then I'm just sitting on my ass. I can't do that. So, got back on a
That's
job
pretty
hunt.
sexist of you.
Hey, whatever. Whatever.
No, I know. I know.
Any woman
You
who has an issue with it, I would be happy to slowly mansplain exactly what I mean to you. So no.
Oh, you're
I
just
mean I
you're
mean
just triggering zero of our listeners because they
yeah,
don't
right.
listen to this podcast.
Well, I mean just feeling like an adult. You know what I mean? Like I
Yep.
don't think
Yep.
an able-bodied adult
Yeah. And you
really
happen to be
has
a
an
man,
issue.
so it's feeling like a man because, that happens to be your gender. Does
Well, I
that
mean,
make
no
sense? Like,
matter how much people say that yeah, I mean, no matter how much people say that they hate being thrown into these so-called gender roles, like they exist for a reason, and a lot of these things are actually kind of true. I mean, the most like staunch like feminists that I've ever met, and some of these people I've been in relationships with, will shit on the whole gender role thing and all
you've
of
been
that.
in relationships with staunch feminists?
Oh my goodness. There's a thing about opposites attract that we'll
That
get
was a
into later.
perfect response to that question. Oh,
I past tense, been. Um, but even those people, when like they will expect you to jump into that role. The second that you get out of line, they're like, "Oh, well, you're the man. You're supposed to open my door. You're supposed to pull out chairs for me. You're supposed to do that." And da 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 da. And I'm like, "Oh, like, where's all of this coming from?" I mean, although I kind of agree, but it's just odd for somebody to have those types of beliefs, but then
yeah.
throw them out of the window when it comes to their personal life.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing. I mean, feminism, let's that was a great thing 80 years ago. Fantastic
Right,
because there really
right.
was a huge chasm between how men and how women were treated in society, and there's still chauvinist pigs out there. They're still in existence, but man, it gets to be a little crazy nowadays with stuff.
Yeah,
I
but
I myself
nowadays,
am
like,
pretty anti gender roles, even though I exist. Even though my wife is probably more wants me to treat her like kind of your standard woman than I actually want to treat her like that. But
right. I mean, I guess it just comes down to what people want. But
yep,
to tell everybody that it's wrong for a man to behave this way because he's a man, or for a woman to behave this way because they're a woman or whatever, like that's bullshit. I mean, it just break it down to a personal level. Whatever you and the people in your life want, then just do that and then be happy
exactly.
with that. But don't try to force that on everybody else.
Yeah, yeah. Even the shaming of other people for engaging in those sorts of roles is an interesting thing. that
Oh
happens
my
in
goodness.
society. I feel bad for a lot of women who I think there's some subcultures in the U.S. where women who stay at home with the kids as opposed to working, are seen as something not like they're not really living up there to their full potential, or crap like that. Where I think in those same subcultures, it's often the opposite with males who stay home, who are seen as breaking gender roles and stuff.
Well, and see, that's exactly what I'm talking about too, because there's this whole big push to, like, abolish just this kind of gender stereotypes and roles. But when some of those same people look at a man who stays home with the children, make all kinds of fun of him. Talk about how he isn't really a man, and I'm like, it doesn't make any sense to me. I mean, especially if the people in that relationship are fine with their arrangement, then
Right.
what the hell does anybody else have to say about it?
Yeah, this is one of those areas where there's a lot of just divergence of thought in different subcultures in the U.S. You urban rural divide, and then you have your like a religious to atheist divide, and all these in these different perceptions of male female roles. To
Yeah.
your point originally, where you don't feel like a man unless you're working. I mean, it is true biologically that men are more hardwired, to do more labor for provision than women are. Not because women aren't capable, of doing great work or making a ton of money. It's because women have to spend 9 months bearing a child, where a lot of that time, they can't do a normal amount of work, and then they have to spend most of the early kid's life just feeding it.
Yeah.
They're stuck in the house biologically. Nothing wrong with that. Nothing, you know,
But I
nothing
don't
negative
even.
or inferior. It's just a part of the way humans developed over time by the nature of how they were made.
Yeah. I don't even think they're really stuck in the house though.
That's true.
I mean, a lot of it comes down to choice, and
Yeah.
there's a lot of research to show that men and women make very different choices when it comes to work. Um, and then that goes into the whole gender pay gap issue where, women tend to, want at some point that clock starts ticking and they want to have children, and which is probably going to take them out of the workforce for a while, maybe permanently, because a lot of them maybe want to stay home with the child, which is fine. I encourage that. But men, not so much. Like, for the most part, men are they tend to think more about ourselves. So it doesn't matter as much to us to take really risky jobs and, do all kinds of crazy shit for a paycheck and work insane hours because, you know what I mean? Like, it's like we don't have that same need to bear and care for children. I mean, once we have them, obviously, you know, we feel that, but there's really not that initial push to,
Well,
that biological clock.
there's a different sort of caring for children too that men feel
Yeah.
pushed to do or obligated to do, maybe, relative to women. There's so many exceptions to all this. When I was talking about women being stuck in the home, I was thinking more historically over the evolutionary development
Yeah.
of the human species, which results in some biological hardwiring, at least, that shows itself over averages.
Yeah. No, that makes sense.
Well, Christmas is coming up. You want to rant about
Yay.
that at all?
Um,
What do you do Christmas stuff with your family?
yeah, I do. Like, I mean, I'm not, super traditional about it.
Right.
I talk to my kids. I tell them, I mean, I just tell them, like, hey, look, you tell me what you want. Like, I'll get it if I can. If it's too expensive, I'll let you know. Like, I try to shoot really straight with them.
Yeah.
Um,
Good.
because I want them to be able to function. I want them to be able to function socially at an advanced level as early as possible. And so I treat them a bit older than they are, instead of, with the baby talk and, using the little kitty analogies for everything. Like, I just tell them, and if they
Yeah.
don't understand, I explain it again. So I tell them, like, look, what do you want? Okay, I can do that. I can't do that. And then, I'll still rap and everything, and then we'll celebrate and you know, trade gifts and all of that stuff. But
Right.
we don't do the whole Santa thing, because I think that's insane. And I went
It's
back and
really
forth.
weird.
Yeah, I went back and forth for the longest time about, like, do I really want to lie to my kids like that? Like, that this shit doesn't make any sense. Like,
Yeah.
why would I
Yep.
do that? Because
I
I'm already
agree.
thinking, like, look, I can't teach my children to be peaceful people and nonviolent by using violence against them when they do something wrong. So I also can't teach them to tell the truth if I'm lying to them, no matter what it is. Like, they deserve to know the truth. Like, look, fuck that. And plus, I want credit for the shit. I'm buying the gifts. Thank me.
Good.
This is my money that I could be spending on other shit. You need to know that.
I'm glad you managed to turn that into a selfish thing. And Rand would be proud of you.
But no, but honestly, like, the major thing is, I just don't want to lie to them. Like, I feel terrible about it, so I just won't do it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, it's such a weird thing. Kids, just growing up thinking that this mythical person exists. I mean, I don't even care if my kid ends up telling other kids that he's
Right.
not real. I mean, what, like, if you want to have your kids believe in fake things, then you better make sure they're only around people that will help them believe that lie.
Yeah. And if
Yeah.
they're mad, tell them to take it up with their parents. They're the ones who are lying.
Right. Right. I mean, shooting straight with your kids is so important. I don't know that. I mean, obviously, you have to respect your kids' age and them where they're at as people in their intellectual development, but it's much better to explain things to them that they don't understand while being honest and forthright with them, so that when they do actually get to the age of understanding, they can look back at those other conversations and just remember, oh, he was telling me the same thing before, and he wasn't trying to hide stuff from me or
Right.
tell me lies about
Yeah. They don't have to deal
Santa.
with having their
Yeah.
illusions shattered.
Right, as few as possible. I mean,
Yeah.
Santa was one thing, but the illusion of the state, that was quite another to have to deal with later on in life, especially because lots of people still believe in it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's such a rough thing with children too, because I mean, it's still kind of just pounded into their head.
Yep.
And, I don't want to be that guy that is just constantly just kind of ranting to my kids about shit that's way over their level. So, so what my approach is, I just kind of point out things, when the opportunity arises, when government or state worshipers do something just completely idiotic, and then, like, I kind of start up a conversation with the kids, and then, they'll end up kind of arriving to the conclusion on themselves by just asking the question, like, "But why did he do that? That doesn't make any sense." I'm like, exactly. Like,
Exactly. Yep. Because he can.
yeah.
Yeah. I just I was thinking about Santa Claus on my Time Hop, which is an app that shows what you posted a year ago today.
Oh boy.
I just saw a thing, and it goes back as far as things go. But I made a meme. I was like, some kids believe in Santa Claus and others in a constitutionally limited government. I like criticizing that.
I like it.
It's such a silly thing. The notion. I had someone say that the other day. They know that because I was criticizing democracy, because democracy it receives way more praise than it deserves. Democracy is fine for making decisions with your small group of friends about where you're going to go out for dinner, but to justify aggression, it's nonsense. But someone, as I was mocking democracy, they said, well, we don't live in democracy. We live in a constitutionally limited republic.
Oh God.
Well,
I
well, okay,
love when
but
people say that because I know they feel so smart when they say,
well,
actually.
the thing is, no one's going around praising republics.
Right.
That's not a thing that people actually do, and I'm not sure. I'm not sure what evidence you have that your constitution has successfully limited government in any way, but
I don't see how a
by my
republic
count,
is
it's
any
the
better.
you don't see how what?
I don't see how a republic's any better.
In
I mean,
theory, it
technically,
respects human
it.
rights. That's
You know what?
what
In
advocates will say.
in theory, I can surf on the rainbow.
Well, you can't in theory, but, but that's the logic behind it. Even
Yeah.
though you can show that it's irrational based on the fact that republics exist through aggressive violence as well, which is an
Yeah.
obvious disrespect of human rights.
But even without that, democracy did technically is supposed to be everybody gets a say, everybody gets a vote, and they all decide, and then there are some losers, whatever, the majority spoke. But in a republic, it's I don't know which is worse because you don't get a say. Like you kind of get a say uh for the person who gets a say. And then their say is probably not going to be your say. Like, you know what I mean? Like it's not going to
Yeah,
match up.
yeah,
Like
no,
it's a losing like either one is just the trash.
yeah. You get to say you can express your opinion about what you want to happen, but we're gonna do stuff to you regardless of what you think. Like in a democracy, like yeah, you can tell us that you would rather not have anyone rule over you, but that is irrelevant as far as we're concerned.
Yeah.
It's the the same logic that would make democracy be a justification of aggression would also, by that same logic, you would also have to say that gang rape was more ethical than just a one-on-one rape.
Well, the majority decided
Right.
that,
Right. The
this
majority
person
and
needed to give up some ass. So, who are we to argue against the wisdom of the majority?
yeah, the majority that happened to be in a small, localized geographic region at a time formed a government, and most of them said aggression was moral. So
Yeah.
the rights of the other didn't matter.
Right.
Also, YouTube, I just noticed, you guys don't know this, but Andre can't actually see me right now. But I just
Yeah.
noticed his shirt, which is a Ninja Turtle.
Yes, sir.
And I am also wearing a Ninja Turtles shirt today. That was completely an accident. We would not have coordinated this.
We so planned this out. No, we didn't.
No, here's what we plan out. Let's try to get the levels right. Okay. Is the video running?
Right.
Democracy, Christmas. My Christmas is so different these last few years. We got like family all over the place. I don't think we're actually doing like a big family Christmas until, and it's not even big, just siblings and stuff until January or something like that. So I guess I'm just watching football all day. I know you're not into that, Andre.
Yeah, which sucks for me because, that could be the thing that I get to look forward to. Like, at least I
Right?
get to watch the
Right?
game, but I have no interest in
Oh
sports.
man.
And then on top of that, I'm spending this Christmas like I'm going to spend time with my children and everything, but I'm going to spend Christmas with my family's or my girlfriend's family, which luckily enough, like they're all really nice, cool people. But it's just weird. I'm very socially awkward, and there's going to be a lot of people cramped into a very small space, and that makes it more awkward for me. So, this will be fun, but hopefully there'll be liquor. So,
Does that make you less socially awkward?
maybe not in a small space.
Okay. Yeah, I don't mind that stuff. I don't mind being in weird positions like that. I'm actually usually more entertained by showing up to people's places that I'm unfamiliar with, that I don't really know, than going to like family events centered around Christmas. One of the weird things to me about holidays in the US that at least has been my experience is that it's often the only time when extended families get together, as if it's, it's just an event that you plan and you do this and you center this around a holiday. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, but it would be interesting to see if you took these holidays out, if these people would still be getting together on a regular basis, or if their relationships are just centered around this arbitrary day at a particular time of year.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good question. I think like where I grew up, like with the type of people I grew up around, even like every holiday is basically an excuse to eat a shitload of food and get pissy drunk, crank loud music, dance, just act a fool. Now,
Okay.
and that goes for everything.
Huh.
Holidays, birthdays, like just days off, random celebrations for anything. Like so I feel like without those holidays, there would still be a lot of excuses for people to just kind of get together and act a fool. Um, but
Yeah.
I kind of don't like that there needs to be an excuse for that. Like, people can't just, let's just all get together. Like, what are we going to do? It doesn't matter. Let's just all get together.
Yeah. Yeah. And holidays tend to interfere with people doing that more spontaneously, at least during those
Yeah.
times.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a big headache and a lot of stress involved with, having to schedule around these holidays and then constantly having to budget for a bunch of stuff for people you barely
Yep.
see.
Yeah, there's high stress around it. You get a lot of times you get a lot of kids kind of reenacting their roles as how they were in the family growing up.
Mm.
Just degrading or regressing, I guess. Back into their childlike role and doing all this sort of unhealthy ways of enabling or obeying or dealing with people's mistreatment of them, really, in terms of
Yeah.
parents and siblings and stuff. Um, I I kind of got rid of that sort of thing in my life a long time ago, but I know I watch a lot of people fall back into this stuff and dread going back home and kind of letting their parents a lot of times walk all over them as people. They're just trained. Parents rarely respect their kids. They just rarely do. They rarely show them the respect that they expect from their children.
Yeah, a lot of that has to do with the way they were raised too. They were kind of treated in that same way. Like, I'm the adult and you're the child. And then, after having that beaten into your head a million times, you kind of take that on yourself and you end up treating your kids that
Yeah.
way. And then you never really look at them as people or equals.
Yeah.
They're just children. They're your child.
I'm an adult and you're the child. Guess what that means? Absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
Oh, you're saying that you're older than I am? That's
Right.
nothing. One thing I say periodically is that I know young sages and old fools. Age has very little to do with one's ability to function well in this world. It does at 5, but that doesn't make someone inherently right just because they happen to be older. And,
Right.
yeah.
I mean, you may have more experience, but what you do with that experience ultimately determines who you are. I mean, there are a
Yeah.
lot of grown ass idiots in the world.
Yeah, and most people, that's not fair. A lot of people don't learn from their experience. So it doesn't matter how much experience you have if you don't actually analyze it and learn wisdom about the world and learn to function better as a result of having experienced things. They just
Yeah.
experience things and go on being kind of foolish. I mean, parents, it's such a weird thing. Like
Those are the
kids,
people you stay away from, and
yeah,
luckily, it's pretty easy to spot them because those are typically the people who, whenever anything goes wrong, s- somebody else needs to bear that blame. Like
yeah,
everything is always somebody else's fault, no matter what happens. Like if you can think about the people in your life, and you can't think of a single time any of those people have said, damn, I'm really like I'm really messing my life up. I was
yeah,
really wrong, you know? Like you should probably stay away from those people.
yeah. That is a nice thing about anarchists, or most of them at least, is that they believe in self ownership. And when you believe in self ownership, then you take responsibility for your own actions. If you actually have integrated that into your belief system, a natural part of that is you are responsible for what you do, and you're responsible for the situations you choose to put yourself in, and how you respond to people, and who you keep in your life. And they often have I would say on average, a stronger willingness to take responsibility for what they've done and how their actions have affected their lives,
Yep.
and moral responsibility for their past,
Yeah,
which I think is
absolutely.
I think that's one of the hard parts about the transition, or it was for me a little bit, from being a statist to an anarchist, is I
Yeah.
had to acknowledge, like, I spent decades of my life favoring aggression against my neighbor. What a shitty thing for me to do. Yes, I was propagandized into it. Yes, that's all, I knew growing up, and that was the culture surrounding me. But I also knew right from wrong, and I could figure out what was a moral way to treat me, as a selfish person. I knew that it
Right.
wasn't right to initiate force against me. So then, having to admit that that was like a really horrible way of seeing my neighbor, as someone on whom violent aggression was ethical.
I think I think that's probably a really big reason why a lot of people just kind of just outright reject anarchy because I'm sure on some subconscious level they realize that part of this process at some point is going to include looking at yourself and admitting
Yeah,
that you at some point in some way have been a horrible person and
right.
owning it, like completely owning it. And people don't want to do that. It's so much easier to blame somebody else, to blame some politician, to blame the liberals or blame the conservatives or, some other group.
Yep.
Like nobody ever wants to look at themselves. And this is something that requires you to do that.
It does. Yeah. It at least makes it really difficult not to do that.
Right. You
Right.
can't be intellectually honest if you don't.
Right. Well, one of the things I wanted to talk about today is I came to anarchism from the ethical perspective. I know, Andre, part of your transition involved reading economists. For me, it didn't involve reading that at all. It was just thinking about uh, non-aggression and realizing the state couldn't function without threatening to kill people who refused to submit to the violation of their rights. But so I was actually economically disinterested for probably a couple of years, or at least over a year of being an anarchist. And one of the things that changed that is just seeing that the opposite of politics, the opposite of government, was economics. It was basically the economic means of acquiring things. And there was a quote I came across. I'll put it up on the screen here for YouTube viewers, but Andre won't see it. There's a quote I came across in Man, Economy, and State, written by the immortal bard of libertarianism, Murray Rothbard. Um, and it's a quote by Franz Oppenheimer that I'll read for the podcast listeners and then talk about it. He says that there are two fundamentally opposed means whereby man, requiring sustenance, is impelled to obtain the necessary means for satisfying his desires. These are work and robbery, one's own labor, and the forcible appropriation of the labor of others. I propose in the following discussion to call one's own labor and the equivalent exchange of one's own labor for the labor of others the economic means for the satisfaction of needs, while the unrequited appropriation of the labor of others will be called the political means. So it's a really, I would say, simple way of viewing the world, but it's simple might sound a little demeaning. It's an accurate and well distilled formulation of the means of acquiring what you want. There, you can acquire what you want by taking it from others through force, and that is politics. So whether that's the political means, whether a government's doing that or an individual's doing that to someone else or one group's doing that to another, that's the political means, the means of coercion. That's how governments function. That's what anarchists oppose. And the alternative means is the economic means. So my interest in economics came about by realizing that economics was simply the ethical way to acquire what you were seeking. And sometimes it's easy to think about economics in terms of just money and material possessions, but that's not the way that the Austrians talk about economics, it's really beautiful because it actually frames economics more in terms of human action and how humans go about acquiring the things that they want. The Austrians talk about humans seeking to maximize their psychic value and getting the things that internally they find to be worthwhile to acquire. So even for an Austrian, like a marriage would be something that could be acquired by either the political means or the economic means. You could take a wife by force, and that would be the political means, or you could woo someone and invite them into your life to become a part of it, and then they accept, and you form a contract. That is the economic means of getting married, and that's something that you do to maximize your psychic value. It doesn't matter whether or not money has formally exchanged hands. It's a broader perspective of economics that encompasses some really beautiful things. I have a bachelor's in psychology, but I learned way more about human behavior and why humans do what they do reading the Austrians than looking at a psychology textbook. They do a better job of sociological human behavior analysis in many ways, at least by finding laws of human action, than any sociology textbook I've ever read. Any thoughts on that, Andre?
I mean, I really think that just sums it up. I mean, it's, there are two basic types of interactions between people. It's either voluntary or it's coercive in some means. And I mean, there are a lot of, douchebaggy things that can be done voluntarily. I mean, things that don't,
absolutely.
Things that don't involve force, but I'd still prefer that any day to not having a say in the matter, or yes. Like we have today, where basically it all comes down to the barrel of a gun. So you really don't have a say.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, spend all day mocking me. That's fine.
Yeah.
Like send the whole world to just criticize me and read me out and just tear me down emotionally. There's a lot of negative things about me you could point to, for sure, and I would feel bad about it. But that is nothing. That is nothing compared to justifying aggression against me. I mean, that is a kind-hearted act of love, emotionally tearing me down, than as compared to supporting an organization that will murder me for exercising my basic human rights.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I think one of the big things that really pushed me over the edge is I can't remember the name of the book. I'll have to find it, but it was a book about hyperinflation in Weimar Republic, and I mean, and it was exhaustive too. They went through everything, and I'm listening, and my head is just hurting listening to how things will go wrong, and then the government will respond in a completely idiotic way, and then things will get worse, and then they'll double down on this first stupid thing that they did, and it was getting to the point where like they skyrocketed in the hyperinflation, and it was so bad that workers were having to be paid like twice a day because the money was losing value that quick. So they would be at work, and then like halfway through the day, they'd have to get their money, and then their wives would have to show up real quick, get the cash, hurry up and buy groceries.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's nuts, man.
Yeah, it was going up so fast that you could sit down at a restaurant, read the menu, find out what you want, and the time between you ordering what you wanted to eat and the time it was time to pay your bill, the price had gone up significantly.
You gotta prepay. That's nuts. That it's similar to Venezuela now, where people are measuring money in terms of weight because it requires so much cash in order to pay for something, and they don't have the same the same increase in or same decrease in the value of their money that like the Weimar Republic and stuff, because they don't really have an actual measurement, at least not in the country itself, of how the money compares to other nations, because they have just laws that the Venezuelan, whatever the currency is like worth 600 or 600 of the Venezuelan currency to $1, and that's just the law in the nation. But that doesn't mean that that's actually what the Venezuelan currency is worth. It's actually worth, like, I think it's like 1/5 of that or something right now. If they get the money out of the country and are able to exchange it for US dollars, it's worth like 1/5 of what the government says it's worth.
Yeah, if somebody's willing to take it.
Yeah. Yeah, which, it sounds like a nice idea to say we'll just write into law what the value of our currency is. But that means that no one's going to sell you anything, meaning you're going to have huge shortages in your country because no one will sell you anything for what the government says the value of the currency is, when that's not actually what the value of the currency is to them.
Right, and I think they really blew it because wasn't their dollar tied to oil? Didn't they nationalize all their oil?
I don't remember exactly, but they did nationalize their oil. I just thought of I think it's an Art of Not Being Governed meme showing Venezuela like one of the most oil-rich nations on earth. One huge tracts of arable land, something else. Just add a little bit of socialism, and then it just showed an image of a destroyed city, people looking for food. Like, they, in terms of their natural resources, they are very well set up to be major producers. I mean, not necessarily an economic powerhouse because they don't have a long history of free-ish markets behind them, and
but definitely self-sustaining if they could get it together.
Oh yeah, it wouldn't take much freedom at all for them to be major oil exporters and have quick wealth increases, especially if property rights were respected and there was some reasonable belief that they would be respected in the future. You'd see tons of capital flowing into the area, to build stuff up and make use of the resources that they have, including their labor.
Yeah, absolutely. I think they really blew it, tying their currency to the oil, because once oil tanked, that's when it really. I mean, the problems were there, but
yeah,
when it started getting to a point where it couldn't be dealt with is when oil tanked, and it just never has been right since then.
Yeah, it wasn't right before that.
No, it wasn't. But it got to a point where they couldn't handle it at that point.
Yeah,
it started spiraling out of control then.
Yeah, that's a problem of nationalizing anything, or one of the major problems.
Yeah,
Is you
at
get
some point it spirals.
Yep,
You know,
you get one of
it,
government's resources tied to some other resource, then you have a collapse of the whole government system instead of just a couple oil companies.
it's just the law of unintended consequences because they don't think ahead.
No, no. Well, you're motivated not to think ahead as a politician for the most part.
Right. Right. Yeah. You only want to promote the here and now, what you can get, what you can offer right now, this
Yes.
second. Like, never mind what it's going to cost later down the road, what it's going to do to your children's children, or,
No, no, no.
none of that matters. We'll deal with that later, or probably won't deal with it later.
Yeah, and you won't have an effect on what it does with your children. Like if you're a politician in the U.S., you won't have much of an effect on what happens to your children or children's children anyway,
Right.
because someone else is going to get elected after you and can completely undo everything you did. So your long-term motivation is 4 years from the day you're elected, approximately.
But
Three
that
and a
would
half
be a
years
better.
during campaigning.
Yeah, but I mean, but that would be, itself so much better if, politicians were actually getting elected and undoing a bunch of stuff. But they don't do that.
No,
Even if they
no.
did, I mean, they probably replace with a bunch of other crap. But they don't even do that. They typically just double down, or they just ignore. They just ignore it. They leave it. They kick it down the road for somebody else to deal with.
No.
You know.
Yeah, I mean, long-term caretaking for anything from your own body to land to other forms of property requires ownership, because you want things to retain their value to you as long as you can. And then if you have children, you want to retain the value for your children as long as you can. And even if you don't have children, you want it to retain its value so you can sell it for this, as close to its maximum, value as you can. That's why people would really take care of things, is because that they are personally motivated to do so. I mean, there are some generous hearts in the world that would care for things even if it came at cost to them, but I don't count on that.
Hmm.
What was that? Yeah, just back to the quote real quick.
Sure.
I think it's such an important question for everyone to ask themselves. How will I go about acquiring the things that I want? What do I think is a moral way to seek to maximize my psychic value, to seek to meet my needs? If it is not violent coercion, if it is not right, if you don't believe it's right for you to get what you want by taking it from others through force, then you can't support government. You can, but you're evil by your own standards.
Yeah.
Politics or economics.
Well, see, they're not actually evil because we're voting for somebody else that's going to do it. So we never actually have to see the body.
Yeah. Yeah. Just the system of violence by proxy is really convenient,
Oh,
because
yeah.
the reality is most people don't have the moral courage to murder others for defending their property from aggression.
Yeah. I mean, not even just murder. I mean, just anything. I mean,
Yeah.
think of
Yep.
anything that the government so-called does for you. Um, I mean, and especially things that are crazy, like, all the wealth redistribution. I mean, if you
Yep.
really think that somebody else's money or a percentage of somebody else's money belongs to you, then why aren't you just sticking people up? I mean, it's just, after all, right? I
Yeah.
mean, you know what I mean? It's okay to take other people's money. So why don't you personally go do it? It's because deep down everybody knows it's wrong.
Yep. Yeah. They they do. They don't like connecting the dots that are so easy to connect with just a little bit of logic and reason and analysis of reality. But
It's
connecting them is
2016. We
so
don't have any
morally
room for logic.
uncomfortable. 2016 what?
Said it's 2016. We don't have any room for logic here.
Well, 2017 is coming up real quick, so maybe
Oh, we definitely
maybe
don't have
we'll
any
have a
room for
chance.
logic there.
All right, Andre, you ready with the news?
Yeah, sure. Good evening, everyone.
Oh, perfect.
Okay, so I wanted it to be something more happy, but it's not.
Okay.
I I'm letting you know now. It's not great.
That's all right. I mean, we have to counter the Christmas spirit somehow.
Yeah. So there's a guy named Rene Lima Marin, and when he was 19 years old, him and another man, they weren't great people. Um, they robbed a couple video stores, and they did it at gunpoint. He says the gun was unloaded. I mean, even still, it's still robbery.
Yeah, doesn't make a difference to the cashier, really.
Right. And I think he hit up like two video stores with his partner, and they ended up getting caught. They got sent to prison for 98 years. 98 years. Now, here's where it gets interesting, because apparently there was an issue with the clerk, who ended up filing his sentence to be run. I think it's concurrent instead of consecutively, right? Which is the one where they're run at the same time.
Because that concurrent is at the same time. I'm not that familiar with prison sentences,
but basically, yeah. His sentences were supposed to run one after another, and that was going to have him and his partner in jail for 98 years apiece. Something happened where there was some error, and they ended up getting filed so his sentences would run together at the same time, and he ends up getting out of prison on a mistake after 10 years. This man's been in prison for 10 years.
Yeah.
And he gets out on parole, so he's not like scot-free in the wind. He's on parole, but he goes on to meet a woman, get married. He adopts her child. They have a child of their own, and started life. He has a job. Like, he's being a very productive, seemingly reformed person. Like, he's a dad. He's a worker. Everything's fine. Then they end up catching their mistake. So they drag this man back to prison to finish serving out the rest of his 98-year sentence. And like, I'm a little torn up over this shit, because there are a lot of people who are doing much worse and getting off like 2 years,
like carrying weed on their person.
Right. But I mean, there's the belief is that these prisons are supposed to be for rehabilitation. Now,
whose belief? I mean, just something delusional people tell themselves.
Right. It obviously is. Obviously, but that's popular belief. But this man seems to have been rehabilitated, or either that or 10 years in a prison made him really not want to ever go back there. And he went on to live a good life, the life that a lot of people want.
Mm-hmm.
And then to drag him back for what? You already took 10 years from the man. Yeah, he robbed the store, but the dude was 19. You know what kind of idiot shit I was into when I was 19? Like, I should probably be in prison right now for the shit that I did that I didn't get caught. Seriously. But I mean, you take 10 years from a man. Like, what more do you want from him? He robbed somebody. Is that just, though, to have a man rot in a cell with his wife and his children without their father. I mean,
No,
and
no,
then
I mean
the
sitting in
crazy,
jail isn't doesn't do anything to make the world more just anyway. Like
yeah,
there's
it
nothing
doesn't.
about being locked in a cage that actually helps add justice to the world.
Not
Because
at
the
all.
system isn't based on justice. Real justice requires a restoration of the victim. The system
Yeah.
has doesn't care about that.
Oh yeah,
Not at
this has
all.
nothing to do with the victim.
Yeah.
I mean, I could understand if he and his partner got caught, and uh, their punishment was that they had to work for these people for free for a while, or something, or just anything, just something directly related to the people that they harmed in some way. But
Yes.
taking this man, dragging him off, throwing him into a cell, and forcing everybody else in the area to pay for it,
Including the victims.
including the victims, has nothing to do with justice. There's nothing right about that shit. And then on top of that, you already took 10 years out of this man's life.
Yeah.
And then you
So
want him to sit in a jail cell basically until he's dead for doing something stupid when he was a kid. I mean, I'm not trying to minimize what he did. It was obviously a very dick thing to do. You go in somebody's
oh yeah, that's
establishment
that's
with a
horrific.
gun. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, he's lucky somebody didn't blow his damn head off.
Yeah, I mean,
But
you can't just go around acting like a government like that and expecting people to think it's fine.
yeah, well,
Yeah.
like they say, government hates competition.
Yeah. Yeah.
You can't out government the government, buddy.
Yeah.
Uh, but
Quit acting like the state. That'll get you thrown in jail.
yeah, absolutely. And that, you know what? The truer words have never been spoken, man. Put that shit on a
So
t-shirt. But
that's
but
funny.
but the crazy thing that I want to point out here is that um part of like their reasoning for not wanting to take it easy on this man is that he knew that the clerk made an error and he didn't say anything about it. Like, are you serious? Like, who's going to rat on themselves
well,
like that?
well,
Like,
maybe
oh,
if you would have said something, he could have got his sentence reduced to 93 years.
right. I'm sorry. There's
Yeah.
like 80 something years missing from my sentence.
Yeah.
I don't think this is right.
I don't know. I would not ask questions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So now he's he's going back in front of the judge to beg this man to let him go back home to his wife and his children,
Yeah. Yeah.
which is disgusting. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, that's just another one of the random problems created by government idiocy.
And that's what it is.
Yeah.
Like, the system is so just ass backwards. And it's not just the justice system, but that's probably
Yeah.
where you see like the harshest direct effect of what happens when these people put their hands on anything.
Yeah, it's not a justice system.
No.
It might call itself that, but it's a law enforcement system. It is a system that sometimes enforces laws and sometimes punishes crimes, which again is not justice, that do involve property rights violations. But it's a law enforcement system that spends most of its time, energy, resources, taxpayer money creating more injustice in the world by enforcing laws that are violations of human rights.
Yeah.
Humorously, it's one of the most prominent reasons why advocates of the state say you need government so you can have a justice system. Yeah.
Yeah. There's
Well,
nothing
you don't
just
have a
about
justice system right now. So
ruining people's lives over a plant, or just giving somebody insane punishments, for crimes that just don't match up in any way.
Yeah.
I mean, not 98 years doesn't match up with that.
Yeah. Honestly, I don't feel that bad for the guy. I feel bad for the
I don't
woman and the
feel
kids.
bad.
Yeah.
That
that
I mean, I
sucks.
don't feel bad that he did a horrible thing, but when it comes down to it, like the guy was 19, so you already took You already took his young adulthood away from him.
Yeah.
Uh, what 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 good is it for him to sit in a jail cell for 10 years, for 10 years or more? Like what is what are any? Oh man, I can't even talk. Like it's just pissing me so much. Like what is
brain
anybody
just
getting
exploded
out
a
of
little bit.
this? Yeah, what is anybody getting out of this? Like he's much more.
The
He's much
prison gets
more.
money from the state for having
Well,
a
yeah, there is
resident in there
that.
for a longer period of time. The government gets to say that they were hard on crime and that they got a robber off the streets and that's it. Otherwise it's
Maybe they should get
just
themselves off the streets while they're at it.
it'd be nice, but I
Yeah,
think it's gonna
government
be a
can't
while
fix
before that
government.
happens. Yeah, government can't fix government. That's It's funny how many people don't see it that way, but good luck, man. Good luck. I mean, government can't fix government unless it's putting up a wall. I mean, that's the way. To make the way to abolish a state is to make sure we keep the Mexicans and Muslims out because they'll vote for bigger government.
Well, I
That
don't know if you've heard, but they're stealing our jobs,
oh
obviously.
oh right right because man, I mean, what what could anyone in the U.S. with some capital possibly do with cheaper labor that would end up benefiting them and the world around them? Stealing jobs.
Yeah, it's a
Nonsense.
bullshit argument.
Yeah.
It's a very bullshit argument. Anybody with a little bit of internet know-how can make some money. Hell, anybody with a little bit of street smarts and $100 can turn that into 1,000.
Yeah.
So I don't want to hear anything about stealing jobs. Also, if somebody coming over from Mexico or wherever that doesn't speak a lick of English, if they can put you out of a job, then maybe you should think about your own value as an employee.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah. And
maybe you might want to learn some more marketable skills.
it comes back to what you were saying earlier. The implication, the underlying premise of they're stealing our jobs is that you have some sort of right to work for someone else. Like you have
Right.
some sort of right to a job that an employer has. Guess what? You don't. So if someone else can outcompete you for it, that's the way the world works.
Yeah,
Just
but
because you want them not to have the job and you to have it doesn't suddenly mean that you have some right to initiate force against them to prevent them from working for someone else.
and that's the way that I like to explain it to people. You break it down as simply as possible. I want something and I don't want somebody else to have it. That's what it comes
Yeah.
down to.
Yep. Yeah, and again, you're not going to see people going out themselves to an employer that hired, some immigrant using weapons and saying you have to fire them and hire me. You won't see them doing that on an individual level because people just don't have the moral integrity to do that. They'll
Right.
get the government to use weapons for them. All this
Yeah.
violence by proxy where people have their cognitive dissonance and their deliberate chosen blindness to seeing that the violence, that they are guilty of the violence for which they advocate.
Basically.
Yeah. All right.
But yeah,
Yes.
I mean, no, I was just gonna say,
Yeah.
I mean that story is pretty much just what it is. Like there's no happy ending and there's no nothing. Like there's no end to it, and it's just like that's how it ends. He's going back in front of the judge. So I don't know.
Well, that sucks for the wife and
Yeah.
kids. Yeah.
Yeah.
And for him and for the people that have to pay for him to be in prison.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like whatever debt he had to pay his. I mean, well, it's obviously
He didn't
not
pay
being
any
paid to
debt.
the victims,
No.
but it has cost him dearly, and I think that I think whatever as far as punishment goes, I think
Yeah, I don't know.
I think
I
10
reject the
years.
system of punishing people as a means
Yeah.
of justice anyway.
Yeah, but I mean, like if we're talking in terms of you do such and such crime and you get
Yeah.
punished in this way for it, well, I think 10 years in prison is definitely enough for this man to get back to his life because I know people that have been to prison. I know people that have been to prison for 4 years and came out completely dead. Like, prison destroys people.
I know.
Prison completely destroys people, and it's commendable that this man could go to prison for 10 years and come out and become a family man. Like, I don't see that happening. I do not see that happening with people that go to prison. So I feel like I'm happy that he was able to come out and be a better person, but I'm pretty sure that man goes back in and has to do much more time. Like, that's gonna destroy him as a person. And if he does happen to get out a little earlier or something and can get back to his wife and kids, he probably won't be fit to be around him anymore. They'll completely destroy that man.
Yeah, we'll see. Yeah, it's one of those, it's one of those things, like, you're in the status paradigm, so I guess the paradigm is people get punished for their actions. So what's a just amount of punishment? I don't know. There's just not any way of measuring that. Yeah, there's no way of measuring that. Whereas you can measure stuff like what he stole, and you can establish, based upon victims' desires and the arbitration of a third party and the desires of the people who did the act of robbery, you can establish some level of payment that is fair for, emotional damage and inconvenience and court fees and stuff. Yeah. That is, it's non-arbitrary because it is decided by the people who are directly involved, as opposed to whatever an adequate amount of punishment is, which is a completely subjective experience anyway. I mean, I know people that don't seem to mind prison all that much. In fact, it feels more like more like a safe life for them. That, they enjoy it there. So their level of punishment for being in prison is not the same as someone that really doesn't want to be there.
Yeah, so it's a shame. It's like, when people get to that point, like, I know people like that too. Yeah. Like, they would rather be on the inside. Everybody they know is there.
That's where my boys are at.
And everything is provided there in some way. They don't have to think about getting up and going to work and dealing with a boss and, paying rent and all that. They don't have to deal with any of that shit. So they'd rather just be inside. It's comfortable.
Yeah, that's scary.
Yeah.
Sad. All right, let's wrap this up. Anything else you want to say to people, listeners, watchers, viewers?
Thanks for listening.
Yeah, guys.
I see that the Facebook page is growing. I like that. All right, cool. We got some viewers. Looks like it's going up every episode. Hopefully this one goes up too. So thanks for coming along for the ride.
As of today, we still don't have an RSS feed, so I don't know what our YouTube views will be. Maybe it'll be less after that, but I know we'll get a lot more listeners when we have an audio only format. I have such a hard time watching videos on YouTube for the most part, and this is not super involved via video. Although last time I did play a video, and that's pretty impressive on my part with my increasing technical know-how. You want to let people know where they can find you, Andre?
You can find me on Twitter at iStackSilver. Big Gamer, PSN, iStackSilver. Right. I also my own series of YouTube videos that you can find at, I believe, I don't know. I don't know if it's under iStackSilver, but but I mean, all my videos are tagged iStackSilver, so you can type that in, I'll pop up.
Nice. All right, cool. If you want to, you can follow us on Twitter at Chain Reaction, and the T is a 1. You can follow me personally on Twitter at JeremiahJM. We have a Google Plus page that's getting up if you prefer that format, and we have a Facebook page, the Chain Reaction Podcast. Thank you so much for listening. If you like this video, if you like watching us, hit like on YouTube, subscribe, tell your friends if you want. You can wait
also
on that
hit that little bell thingy too, because YouTube bell is weird. Yeah, with the notifications, YouTube is weird. It's unsubscribing people. It's doing all kinds of crazy stuff.
All right, hit the bell. Make it ring. Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, Happy Hanukkah, Happy Winter Solstice. Enjoy your life. Until next time, y'all. Free the markets.
Fuck the state. Peace out.